Every single college football season, there are some teams that aren't going to win national titles. They're not going to be competing for conference championships, but they are there simply to promote and cause complete and utter chaos. They can come from the most unlikely of areas, but it just seems like every single year there are some teams that are just destined to derail other teams' entire seasons. So in this video, we're going to take a look at 6 teams that I consider to be the chaos teams for college football in 2024. Georgia Tech is a program and a team that requires no further introduction when it comes to being a chaos team. Last season, they had some extreme highs and lows. They beat Miami on a last-second Hail Mary, lost to Bowling Green and Boston College, and also beat North Carolina in a shocking upset as well. They were a team that was hot and cold. With a guy like Haynes King at quarterback that can hurt you with his legs and through the air, it was really a team that felt like they could beat you any given Saturday if they had their A game. And when you talk historically as a program, under Paul Johnson, Georgia Tech was an absolute menace to play. They ran the triple option, and they were a team that could really be an issue for you if you did not have a disciplined team. Under Paul Johnson, they rose to some pretty great heights. However, things really took a hit when Jeff Collins took over after Paul Johnson. The transition wasn't very smooth. Georgia Tech entered a bit of a dark age there for a couple of seasons, but in comes Brent Key, who's their current head coach, a Georgia Tech alum that really rallies guys around and playing with a clear identity under a guy that's going to be here for a while, instilling a culture. It's just rubbed off on all his players, and they all play with the same chip on their shoulder. Georgia Tech ended their 2023 season with a victory in a bowl game and carry a lot of momentum and a lot of their key pieces into 2024. And with teams like Florida State, Louisville, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Miami, NC State, Georgia, even a team like Virginia Tech on their schedule, they have a lot of teams they play that have big-time expectations. The one that stands out most is their Week 0 game in Dublin against Florida State. They tend to have a history of upsetting the Noles in untimely fashion for Florida State, and it's a team that you should definitely keep bookmarked if you're looking for chaos teams. What about Michigan State? Jonathan Smith ditches his alma mater and joins the Spartans in East Lansing, and Michigan State used to be a feared brand in college football. Under Mark D'Antonio, they established themselves as a team that any given season could knock off those top contenders and even insert themselves into that position. They made the college football playoff as one of the only few teams to make it during the 4-team era, and Jonathan Smith brings exactly the chip on his shoulder that I think a coach needs to have to operate as the head coach of Michigan State. At Oregon State, he turned in a 10-win season just a couple seasons after inheriting a poverty program. More importantly, he brings over some really talented players from Corvallis in year 1 like Aiden Childs, who should be a phenom. And this roster has a lot of untapped potential. The Mel Tucker era was pretty disastrous outside of one solid season. It really seems like Michigan State is due for a bit of a revival, and Jonathan Smith is the guy for the job. And in year 1, they play Michigan and Ohio State and Oregon, and it really seems like they could end up surprising some people even if they don't have a super successful season overall in year 1. There's going to be plenty of chaos in the Big 12 this season, but one team in particular I have circled is Iowa State. The Cyclones are a team that had one of the youngest teams in all of college football last season, and they turned in a really solid season. However, they were wildly inconsistent. Now, it's expected that with a lot of their production coming back, they're going to get back on the right track and be a more consistent team this season. However, they're probably still going to be prone to an occasional lapse, but what's scary about this team is the fact that when they're on their A game, they're capable of beating anybody else in the conference. Last season, when they lost 6 games, 2 of those losses were to Oklahoma and Texas. So with them not on the schedule, their best opponents are going to be ones they are definitely capable of beating. So the top contenders in this conference need to watch out for a well-coached team with a lot of production and a lot of young guys developing in Iowa State. Missouri is a team that's capable of causing more chaos than any team listed on this list, and that's because they're in the SEC, where a lot of the top contenders are going to be found in any given season. Last season was spectacular for Missouri. They emerged as a national contender, won the Cotton Bowl, and really had a phenomenal season, just a play or two away from punching their ticket to the playoff. What Elliot Drinkwitz has done has been very impressive, and Missouri has a history of being a chaos team. They were able to do it their first couple seasons in the SEC, winning that division in the East a couple years. They're a team that can really do it, especially with guys like Brady Cook and Luther Burden coming back. There's no reason Missouri can't be in the thick of this race in the SEC. Will they win the SEC? It's not as likely, but they're definitely a team that can rise up and deliver a knockout blow to any contender any given week, and I think that's one of the things that makes this Missouri team so entertaining to watch. USC is a very polarizing team to talk about. Whenever you bring up the Trojans, all anyone ever want to talk about is how Lincoln Riley will never win a championship and about how his defenses are soft and all that stuff you hear. And a lot of that is probably true. But what's also true is any given season, USC is going to have one of the most lethal offenses in all of college football. And sometimes it's not going to matter if they can't stop you because you can't stop them either. And with the way Miller Moss looked at the end of the season and in that bowl game, it really feels like USC could be another team that can just score nonstop with all the playmakers they have. A young guy like Zachariah Branch as well. It really seems like the Trojans are a team that isn't going to win the Big Ten, but is going to be right there in a lot of games versus key contenders, and right there to shake up the foundation of some teams that feel like they're a lot more of a complete team than the Trojans. So for USC in 2024, being a chaos agent is probably going to be their main purpose. The California Golden Bears are going to be a chaotic team for more than just one reason. Being in the ACC this year, they're going to be one of the most well-traveled teams in the entire country. But between the white lines, there is a lot to like about Cal as a chaos agent this season. Justin Wilcox is a coach that was kind of just meandering through, but last season was some really good sparks for what they could potentially turn into. Fernando Mendoza is a firecracker of a quarterback that could throw for 4 touchdowns or 4 interceptions, or both any given game. They've got a guy like Jaden Ott in this backfield and a veteran offensive line that could really move some teams around in that soft bottom tier of the ACC. And it really feels like while Cal's not going to be beating Clemson or Florida State, I don't know if there's another team in this conference that they're not capable of taking out. And there's a long-held belief that maybe the Pac-12 is a little tougher than the ACC, and that's going to be directly compared this season when Cal and Stanford both enter. We'll see just how soft the bottom tier of that conference is. What makes chaos teams in college football so fun is you never quite know where they're going to come from. It could be a team coming off of a 2-10 season, or it could be a team that deserves to lose a bunch of games but just wins on some miraculous plays, or a team that starts the year off terribly and then just gets hot at the right time. And for that reason, it's one of the best parts of college football. And so I can't wait to see who the chaos teams will be in 2024.